Well, let's not waste any time because we have someone on Skype.
There he is.
And he's right here, almost in the flesh.
Holy cow. That's me.
Chris, how are you doing,
Chris.
sir?
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
So Chris Parry, editor over at Equity Guru. If you haven't heard any of his stuff, where have you been all this time? EquityGuru.com. There's lots of good stuff on there. A lot of good due diligence. I appreciate the work you do.
I appreciate that. We're trying to bring back the spirit of David Baines to the public markets and swing the sword of vengeance. We figure that the best form of stock promotion is actual honest information, and that legitimacy is a nice marketing niche in the country right now.
Yep, absolutely. Chris, I've been following you for the last 2 to 3 years, and I love your work. I was actually watching some of your YouTube videos. You're at a mining conference, and
right.
you were just educating people on scams and to watch out for them, and I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, I my previous conference keynote was called "5 of you guys are going to be dead by this time next year, so we better get some new investors in the room." Which was kind of alarming to the old grey hairs that were there expecting to be told about grades of mine yield and etc. I really like to throw the cat amongst the pigeons and let people take notice of things that they normally sort of roll their eyes at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think of the cannabis valuations right now, like Canopy?
It's insane, but it's been insane in late 2014, late 2015, late 2016, 2017. Myself and the Wolf of Weed Street have been saying all year long, get out of all weed until the end of the year. If you trace Canopy's share price, and that's a pretty good bellwether for where everything's gone over the last 4 or 5 years. From October to November, things get out of control every single year, and we always have the conversation. Are the valuations just stupid, or are they justified? They're always stupid, and then they're justified the following year. So right now, I can't say that I'm not going out and playing with some stocks that I don't believe in long term right now, because everything's going up like nuts. But there's also some real value to be had if you look deeper into the medium-sized market, the guys that have maybe a nice niche, guys that have a story that hasn't been told so well. We recently started talking about Supreme. They've been pretty quiet on the marketing side for the past couple of years. As soon as we started talking about them, the market cap went from 300 million to 500 million. So I think there's a lot of value to be had in stories that if you do a little digging, you can find some value in, even if the Canopies of the world are at a valuation that will never ever make any sense.
You mentioned finding your niche. Do you think the big guys can find a niche in this market?
They'll buy a niche. They'll buy 5 niches and see which one works. I mean, that's been Canopy's way, right? Like, Canopy spent their way to trouble at every single turn. Every step this cannabis market has made, Canopy screwed it up somehow, and then just bought somebody who hadn't screwed it up. And Aurora's pretty much done the same thing, and Afria, to a lesser extent, is going out and finding nice little opportunities where they think maybe there'll be money in the future. So to me, I don't want to buy Canopy. I want to buy what Canopy's going to buy next.
Right.
And that's why we put out a story yesterday that melted our service down, which was basically a form guide as to what Canopy might be interested in putting its $5 billion to.
Yeah, I read that at 6 o'clock this morning, and then I sent it to my better half. She woke up.
It's good 6 a.m. reading.
Yeah, I told her, I said, honey, read this. So yeah, that was a great article, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
So we talked about larger caps, and we talked about medium caps, and we've talked about juniors. What about the companies that we look at and just think to ourselves, what the hell is going on? And I'll say the company that we're looking at, and this is as me as an investor, I lost money on this play. When I saw the financials for Midas yesterday, I almost spit out my drink. There was $18 million. Do we have my screen? Can we split the screen? I've got it up here. $18 million on management compensation in 9 months. $2.7 million on public relations and investor relations when I kept emailing and got no responses. I could not believe it. I don't even think they've got $1 revenue. What is going on?
Well, you know what's going on. It's been going on at Abatis for the last 3 years. Abatis has always been smoke and mirrors. Like I tell a story often of back in the day when I was working at Stockhouse, and Abatis signed a contract for a marketing program at Stockhouse, and we went in there to talk about it. And they had 8 verticals at the time, and I said, look, you bought 8 stories. I want to write a story about every single vertical you have. I want to explain all of these companies that nobody knows about, nobody understands, and I want to get right into the weeds on them. And they backed out of that contract the next day. They said, we don't think we can put a leash on Parry. The reality was that most of those verticals didn't exist. They were just companies that they'd created and press releases that they'd put out. And that scam continues to this day. The $17 million is the least of it. If you go start looking into some of the elements of what they're saying they have, I'd love to go out there and have a look, because all the things that they've said they've had over the last several years, none of them have come true. And realistically, you saw them selling Northern Vine, the lab that isn't a lab, as an equity event. Like, that was the only thing they had. They had a couple of machines with pretty lights that go ding. What else has Abatis got? Like, it's a mess, and it just leads you into that whole Bridgemark den of bullshit, where for those that I guess don't know the form guide on Bridgemark, they'll come to you and say, we'll give you $4.5 million in a raise tomorrow. We'll give you a bank draft. It's in your bank account. You've got $4.5 million. What public company wouldn't like that? The other side of it is you're going to give us $3.5 million of that back as a check swap from marketing, and then you're going to give us a whole bunch of consultant warrants that we can trade in as quickly as we can. If you go back and look at any company that Bridgemark's done that deal with, any company at all, and it's easy enough, just Google $4.5 million raise, not single one of them has ever come out of it with their ass not bleeding. It is a disgusting mess. And the fact that it's been allowed to go this long is reprehensible. The fact that they're still doing it today, even though they're under investigation, is mind-boggling, and really speaks to the fact that they don't give a shit what the regulators have to say. The regulators never chase down their fines. No one's going to go to jail. And Justin Liu, the guy at the top of it all, driving his purple sports car around, you don't have to do a whole lot of Googling to find out what his deal is. His mom was a loan shark, allegedly. She was involved in a penny stock scam, allegedly. There's if you search for Justin Liu, L-I-U, and Vice, you'll find a story about all the illegal dispensaries they operate on the East Coast, and then you can track that back through the company that wants to take those illegal dispensaries public, and there's a tie into Bridgemark, and there's ties into Abatis, and it's an unholy mess.
Yeah. And if we can get my screen up again, this was off of cu.ca, so we're going to use that word alleged again. These are companies that people have looked into to see their involvement here, and you see some tickers up here. You'll see the All Shares Matter hashtag. People have seen Carl with that shirt numerous times. Again, it's just pounding the fact that retail investors do have a voice. But if you look at some of those, you look at CRIP, ATT, AFI, DNAX, 9, UAV, it goes on easy, it goes on and on and on. Look at their charts. You decide. Look at their charts. And I know that a lot of stocks went up, and I know a lot of stocks went down, but when you start seeing trends like this, as an investor, I want to look for these things because I want to make smart decisions. I want to, if I know my buddy down the road is trying to screw me over in some sort of way, I'm going to stop buying off my buddy. That kind of goes with stocks as well. You have to be knowledgeable of who runs the company, who owns it, and you see some of these things. I mean, going back at Abatis, you see some certain aspects of the deals that they made. And this is my money that they're making the deals with. Like, it was my money. I lost $2,000 on it. Not an extravagant amount, but that's a good amount of money.
It's a question
so
for
I
you
really
on that.
care about what my company is doing because I own a piece of it. That's why you buy shares. You own a piece of a company, and to see a company, where $18 million was their management and their stock went down by 80%, that makes me upset. And that's why we wanted to reach out because I know that you've touched up on that as well yourself. Investors should know about this.
Yeah, well, look, I would question, why would you put $2,000 into Abatis? Like, at what point in their lifespan has there ever been something where it looks like this is a legitimate play? It's been a rotating cast of characters. It's been a lot of promises that they've never delivered on, not one time in their history, other than a recent promote and raising some money here and there from nefarious characters. There's been nothing in this company that has ever said you must invest in this thing. Now it's valid to have a nice across the board scope of a lot of different players, but man, anyone I would say, and this is on you, man. Like, you got to do some due diligence, and you do the most basic due diligence on a Midas, and it's nothing. It's gone. It's money out the window. It's always been money out the window.
Yeah, and that is going down in my record as the largest percentage loss I've ever had in a stock. And that actually emphasized the reasons that I like looking into companies. I still got caught up in everything going crazy, and I looked at their investor presentation. Whoever the marketing person, the investor presentation, it's a phenomenal investor presentation. And
that's where
I got caught by it. It's afterwards when you start looking into it more, that's my largest percentage loss that I've had throughout the cannabis stocks. And it's like you said, why? I threw a dart. I fell victim to it. Yeah.
That'll get you. That'll get you. The dartboard never really pays off. But you know what? It'll probably come back because there's a lot of crappy companies that do. And if you look at Midas' history, it's had moments of share price appreciation, usually on the back of that massive amount of money they're spending on marketing. And bless them, the guys like me, we love companies that spend money religiously on marketing and don't really want anything back for it. I just wish that they'd put $1 million of it in my account, because I would still write negative things about them, but I'd still have $1 million.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great lesson. It's a great lesson. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring this up at the show. Is it's not necessarily about that company specifically. It's not necessarily about, and it's about put a little time into the companies that you're going to invest in, because you never know when you're going to get caught by something. You never know when there's insanely cheap paper that's about to come out 2 days from now, and that company might be great, but that cheap paper comes out and it just tanks the day after you bought it. Put your time in. You can get caught on diligence and make your choices.
You can get caught on a great company, like T-God. I'm a fan of. I love T-God, and they're a client. But there's a lot of paper coming out that's going to put pressure on that stock. So what they're doing is they're trying to minimize that by going out and doing as many good deals as possible and as many big deals as possible. So they've managed to keep that share price up to the point where when that paper does come off and people take their inevitable profits, because $1.15 to $7, you're going to sell. There's actually something behind it there. A company that is just running on fumes, and 50% of the weed companies are that, will have inevitably a whole bunch of cheap paper out there that someone got for $1.50, and it's going to sell for whatever you're buying for, and you're left holding the bag. So people have to stop being manic about the weed sector and thinking that everything's going to make money. Realistically, nothing's going to make money. There's going to be carnage in the sector before there's any profit. But what's going to happen between now and then is some companies have a long way to go to reach the valuations that other companies currently have. So look for value. Shop at the dollar store when it comes to stocks. Don't shop at Neiman Marcus.
Yep. I preach that all the time. Don't chase rockets. I mean, if you're going to get into a new space and you're early, sure, there's some dart throwing that goes on and it turns out to be successful, but we're not in that place anymore. It's just the way it is.
So, Chris, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, actually, you were talking about looking into companies that do have that value, and ones that, once you start peeling back the different layers of what they're doing and where you think they're going to go, are there any that you look at right now and say, you know what, I think that's very attractive? You said Supreme earlier. Are there any others?
Yeah, Supreme's maybe a little less attractive now that it's practically doubled its market cap in the last 10 days. But look, I think what I want to do is I want to find who am I going to do business with. What am I going to buy? What am I going to consume? And who's the most likely to succeed in that area? Where is there value to be had? I think beverages is obviously the hot area right now, and it's driving the whole market. But am I more likely to double my money by buying Canopy at 62 or Sproutly at whatever Sproutly's at today, $1.20 or something? I want to triple my money. I want to quadruple my money, and I'm going to do that by finding things that aren't yet the successful stuff, that aren't yet the hot trend, The sectors that still need a little love, like if you were buying Tinley when it was at 50 cents before the Canopy deal happened, you're loving it now. You've just about doubled your money, and that's in a couple of days, right? Canopy can go from 48 bucks to 62 bucks, and that's impressive looking, but it's not a double, right? And to get a double from Canopy from here requires so much heavy lifting in terms of value that I can't see it ever happening. That said, I've said that every year since 2014, and they keep doing it. So, but I think niche industries. I like G-Tech because it's artisan growing in an area that I think will become a green tourist spot in the Okanagan. I like C21. I think they've got big plans and they're moving quickly to achieve high revenue through acquisition. I like Supreme because John Fowler is a fucking machine, and whatever the weed industry does going forward, he will be at the heart of it. He's slow to buy stuff, but I know he wants to buy stuff like a madman, and he's got a massive war chest at his disposal. There are a lot of good companies out there. TGIF down in Nevada, no one's watching them. No one's watching Friday night because they think it's a David Stadnick, let's go get shit-faced on a Friday night in Vegas deal. Braden Sutton is running that show down there, and he is running it like a Fowler Jr. He is acquiring good stuff, getting into a lot of sectors. It's certainly not going to be a sparkly sit on the strip and let's all be wear affliction t-shirts kind of deal. That deal is going to mature quickly, and it's going to be a much bigger deal than anyone sees.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because TJF is an American company. I was completely out at Alan Broxy, I'm sure you're well aware of him. When the Cole memo was rescinded, and I was a part of 420 Investor, that was a really big sign to sell a lot of American cannabis, because that was a huge sign like, oh no, for the temporarily, there's an issue. And I remember looking at certain stocks and being like, I can't wait to get back in them. Like your MPX Bioceuticals, look what they just did. Most people had never heard of them, and they're what, 4th or 5th revenue per quarter of any company in North America. TGIF, you've got Body and Mind, they're out in Nevada. Is it time to start looking at American cannabis and think, you know what, I know it's still legal federally, but there are some gems out there especially compared to Canadians?
So the Canadian market is maturing quickly, but it's going to hit its glass ceiling, right? Everyone who's going to have weed in Canada is going to have it shortly. In the US, that ceiling is a long way away. And what I'm looking for in that country is, and what Canopy said they're looking for as well, they're looking for US exposure. They want companies that are going to quickly become national companies. Now, right now, to become a national cannabis company in the US is problematic because every state has different rules. There's different things allowed in different places, and federally still illegal. But you look at a company like Ianthus, which has coverage now in like 5 or 6 states. You look at what's happening with C21. Crop infrastructure is in a couple of countries and 3 or 4 places in the US. These companies are looking to get to a point where when big pharma and big agriculture and big whatever the hell comes in and says, I want to be in the weed game, they're going to do what Constellation did with Canopy. They're going to go for something that can be large quickly, and not necessarily something like Canopy that is overvalued right now. I said in my piece yesterday, Ianthus, I think, is a screaming buy at the valuation that it's at and the amount of states that it's in. The thing to look at with Ianthus, MedMan says we have X number of dispensaries, and that's fabulous. But Ianthus has a similar number of dispensaries. The key difference is that in certain states, having a dispensary means you can deliver to the entire state. So having a dispensary in Florida means you have distribution across Florida. Having a dispensary in Vermont means the same thing. So Ianthus has really sort of tooled themselves up to be competitive to, say, a MedMen, but like a 1/5 of the market cap, which I think is very attractive. And they don't have all the votes as well.
Yeah, Ianthus actually, earlier the year, I grabbed it at $2, sold it at $4, got 100% out of it, but then you saw the run that went on right afterwards.
It has just never stopped growing, and that's a fantastic sign. It means that the guys who have that stock, they're not just holding it, they're adding to it. They're telling their friends about it, and they're being rewarded for it with good management doing good things. full disclosure, Ianthus is a client, but the reason that Ianthus is a client is because we looked at them and said, holy crap, these guys we need to be associated with, went after them and got them. Same with Supreme, same with TGIF. Like, we don't go and wait for companies like Abatis to come along with a check. We go out and we find best of breed and say, let's work together so that you guys can get your story out in the way that you need to.
Chris, on that note, switching gears a bit, I believe CCW is a client of yours, right?
CCW, yep.
Yeah, okay. So we're a big fan. We've had John from BMR on here last couple of weeks to help us understand CCW and their tech. Their stock's pulling back here. What do you think about them? What's your take on them?
So I would challenge anybody who finds themselves in the same room as Frank Vassar, the CEO of CCW, to sit down and have a beer with him and just listen, because that guy will tell you stories that will make you very happy to be involved with his outfit. He's a no bullshit guy. He'll tell you all the things he screwed up with. He'll tell you all the things that he thinks are great. And look, that region I think should be red hot. It isn't, because lithium's got a drag on it. But I really like what's going to happen in the cobalt region. We've got clients there in terms of Cobalt Power Group. We used to have First Cobalt / Cobalt Tech. We've had a lot of clients that have been up there, so we understand the region well. The only problem with that region is the best property is lived on by people. There are drills going in behind the hockey arena in Cobalt. Like, it's literally, if they could move the people away, they could drive bulldozers through it and pull out the blue stuff. So the challenge for Canada Cobalt Works and everyone else up there is that they're picking around the edges of where they really know the good stuff is, and the greater sector is not really rewarding them in the way it should. All the craze that we had for lithium and cobalt over the last couple of years has died off, even though the things that we were buying the stocks for, the growth in electronic vehicles and electric vehicles and in batteries, it's all happening now. Like, all the stuff we thought was going to happen is happening, and yet we're not buying the stock anymore. So what, are we just chasing the market, or are we actually buying for a reason? If you're buying for a reason because you're looking at a Tesla or an electric vehicle to replace your gas guzzler, if you're looking at oil and gas and saying that's not going to come back as a thing, then you should be buying the crap out of cobalt. You should be buying the crap out of lithium and manganese and graphite, for that matter. You got to put your money where you believe you're actually going to be standing in a couple of years' time. And I think CCW is doing everything that it should to be right there when the rubber hits the road on that respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'd love to have Frank on here, and
he's a good guy.
Ask him some questions.
No, well, we won't take too much of your time, but I do have one more question for you, because we just spanned cannabis. We went to a little bit of mining, and although technically it still is cannabis, hemp. Are you starting to look for, because don't get me wrong, where we are in hemp is like where we were cannabis 2 or 3 years ago.
Yes.
It is going to explode. Who are you looking at?
Hemp is my jam. Hemp. We've been talking about hemp for a couple of years, but no one paid any attention to it, so we've just kind of stopped. But hemp is, forget cannabis, and I know hemp is cannabis scientifically, but forget standard commercial cannabis. The getting high market is already getting high. No one who wants to get high isn't already getting high. So that market's already rich and mature. The hemp market expands way beyond that. It's cheaper to grow. You can grow it outdoors and no one's going to steal it in the back of a truck. It's useful for all the cannabinoid purposes. It's useful for building. It's useful for clothing. It's useful for paper. Like, if we can stop cutting down our forests to produce newsprint, that'd be a good thing. Well, hemp will allow us to do that. The problem is that hemp has been under the same restrictive rules as cannabis has for the most part for the last God knows how many years. So farmers that have been growing it in expectation that maybe one day things will change. I know some people at Hempco that Aurora bought recently, and they will tell you on the quiet that they invested in some machinery that wasn't useful for them a couple of years ago. They weren't legally allowed to use it, and there was a lot of consternation as to whether they were wasting their money or not. As of now, they're allowed to use it, and that means that they can process the entirety of the hemp plant instead of just the seeds. So that company suddenly becomes a much bigger deal. Aurora's already got the deal on it, so it's not much use for us. But other hemp plays that are out there, including with which TGIF is now one of them, they've just done a deal for a hemp play in Nevada. Those are going to be really interesting going forward. Nobody understands them, so there's no valuation given to them. But I guarantee you within 2 years, the majority of Canadian farmers will be growing hemp and little else.
Absolutely, and that's why I bring it up, because I've been thinking, the reason I actually got into Bedrocan when I first started investing in cannabis was because I saw a clip on hempcrete and thought, this is literally the future. You can build a home with it. It's your insulation, your vapor barrier, and it's flame retardant, and it actually has a negative carbon footprint as well. And what you can use, you open up your cupboards in your kitchen, you open up your cupboards in your basement or your washroom, there's a good chance hemp can replace half of that stuff. And we haven't even begun doing that yet. It's like you said, trees. Why are we cutting down trees for paper and clothing anymore? You can just grow hemp. Why are we worried about the Trans-Pacific Pipeline if we could be using hemp for plastic and oils? You know, it's been suppressed for such a long time, and I won't put my tinfoil hat on why, but I have some pretty damn good reasons for why it would. There's such a future with hemp, and we're not talking about it.
No, we're not. And I'll tell you, over the last few months, I've heard a couple of pitches from private companies that are in that field that are starting to look for public money. The problem is that everyone's put a high valuation on getting stoned. And honestly, that's just not a business that I'm interested in. I don't want to be sending people into a tailspin. I want to be sending people into a cancer-free world. I want to be building cheap homes in Haiti. I want great swathes of hemp fields in Zaire that make everyone in that country a living wage and bring us way cheaper than cannabis access to oils. Like we haven't, as you said, we haven't begun to touch the surface on hemp. Anyone who thinks that marijuana is about to get to its peak, it is, but I guarantee you all the LPs are looking at hemp right now. They're all thinking, if we grow hemp instead of weed, will we be able to get a cheaper cannabinoid oil out of it? They're experimenting with a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to be great. And there's going to be other things as well that you can extract cannabinoids from that are going to be big going forward as technology gets better for it. So any company that, to me, that is actively looking at what's next is a good bet. And beverages is great. Everyone's excited about beverages now, but what's after beverages? What's going to happen after that? Is it going to be vitamins? Is it going to be prescription drugs? Is it like, that's where you want to have your money, is the thing that no one's looking at yet.
Yeah, I think some of the big players are still confused themselves, trying to figure out where the market's going, honestly. I mean, I'm going to keep a close eye on R&D, but it's just hard. You know, just keep networking and bring people like you on here, and maybe we'll figure it out.
No, absolutely. And Chris, I appreciate your time. I didn't think we were going to be spanning cannabis, mining, and hemp all in the same half hour. So I appreciate it. I'll be keeping a close eye on what your picks are coming in the future for hemp, because it's like you said, we haven't even begun with hemp. I can't wait until people start realizing how special that plant is and the companies that start making some incredible products out of it.
It's going to be great. Thanks, guys. Anytime.
All right, Chris. Yeah, take care, man.
Thank you.